Hi again. Here we are to talk about JavaScript. In the last example, we used a little bit of jQuery to make our kind of scrolling thing. What I'd like to do is head back to JavaScript and then come back to jQuery. And before we can do more with jQuery, we should take a quick look at some of the basic features of JavaScript. And the two things that I want to look at are arrays and objects. And so this video will focus on arrays. So this will just be a short introduction to the array. If you're familiar with the array in other languages, the JavaScript array should be really easy to pick up. So here I have a brand new HTML document. It's named index.html, and I just put a script tag in it. I'm going to do away with all the boilerplate HTML, and this will work fine in the browser, and I'm just going to use the console for the example. So what does an array look like in JavaScript? Well, you can define an array by making a variable. It can be any name you want. It could be my array or, list of things, whatever you want to call it. For the example, I'll just call it array to remind us that it's an array. And then we can set the array equal to a value, and we can do it this way with the square brackets. That's an easy array initializer, right? So we just put the empty square brackets, and we've got an array with 0 items in it, okay? So an array in JavaScript can hold any kind of value. Okay, so any mix of values. In other languages, you may run into arrays where they are typed and you have to set the type of an array to a particular thing, like it can't hold different kinds of things, okay? So in JavaScript, though, an array can hold any kind of thing. So it could hold a number, it could hold, a decimal number, it could hold a string, thing, it could hold another array, anything you like. So you could put anything in here. Oh, and this array could have other stuff in it, right? And then maybe I could put math.py in there. Oops, not pi, right? Okay. So math.py is a construction in JavaScript that has the number pi in it for convenience, right? So anyway, so there we go, right? And there's your array. So arrays are indexed. So they're index organized, and the first element in the array is at index 0. So if you want to access an element in an array, we'll just do it with the console here. So what you'll do is you'll type the name of your array, follow it with the square brackets. Let me put a space around that, right? So you'll make array here. You'll follow it with the square brackets, and then in the square brackets you'll include the index. So if I wanted the first item from the array, I would put index 0. Okay. If I wanted the second item from the array, I'd put index number 1. If I wanted the third item of the array, I'd put index number 2. If I wanted the fourth one, I'd put index number 3, etc. Right? So there's 0, 1, 2, and 3. Right? Let's give it a test. So we'll save that. We'll open up our page here in the browser. I'm going to get the console. And in the console here, you'll see that I've logged out the number 11, 22.4 thing, and an array, right? That's item number 4 in the array, index 3. And then you'll see it shows an array here. If I open it up, it kind of has the 3 values in it, right? So that's probably not unexpected. If you wanted to get at the nested elements in the array here, you could follow this with the square brackets again. Since this returns an array, we can get the index of that array, which would be this guy, and we could get the first one, or let's get the second one, item number 1, right? So if I refresh here now, you can see that gets 44 because it is giving me the second item here, okay? Okay, cool. So we got basic array. If you want to add an item to the array, actually let's do this. Let's console log the whole array right here. Right, so that should just show us the list of the whole thing. And then if we say, array, there's a whole bunch of methods that work with array. So, we can look up those later. For right now, we don't really need them, but just some simple ones. If we want to add an item to the array, you're going to say push. So we can say, let's push, hello world into the array, and then we'll console log the array again. So up here, we logged the array before we added the hello world. Then we added hello world, and then we printed the array again, right? So let's give that a try. So here's our array, and then we pushed hello world in, and then we printed it again. Okay, so so that's pretty simple. What else can you do with an array? Well, if you wanted to loop through all the items in the array, you could do this. First of all, you need to know the length. So let's get the length. So if I'm curious here, console.log, and to find out how many items are in an array, you're going to say length. Okay, so array.length tells you how many things are in the array. Let's test that. We've got 6 things in our array. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is this whole thing. 5 and 6. Okay, so that makes sense, right? So how do we loop through all the items? Like, I'm not sure how many items are there. There's a couple ways to do this. You can say for. So this is a for loop in JavaScript. And there's a couple ways to write this. You can write it as for var I. Let's start I with a value of 0, semicolon. Let's repeat while I is less than array.length. Oops, not last of index. Semicolon, and then I++. That means, let's create a loop that will count. It will count using this variable I, which has an initial value of 0. So I will start counting at 0 or from 0. And we'll continue counting while this condition is unmet. So as long as while this condition is met, maybe you'd say. So as long as I is less than the length of the array, then continue counting, right? And then the last one is with each count, add 1 to I. So the plus plus means add 1. So this is how we're going to increment to try and achieve this situation here, right? So so anyway, so there we go. And then we could say, console log array bracket I, right? Because I is going to be the index, and that should print out everything in the array. Let's give that a test. So we'll save it here, and we'll print, oh, look, there's 6, 11, 22, thing, other array, pi, and hello world. So that should be all the items here. Okay, so we got that. Here's another way to loop through an array. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll console.log, and we'll just put some lines here just so we can see where this one ends, where this loop finishes, and then where the next one starts, right? So another way to loop through an array is to do this. Say for. So we'll start with the same construction for the for loop, and we'll say for var I in array. And what this will do is it'll repeat once for each index of array, and I will be the index. So it's kind of a shortcut to this, okay? And what we'll do is we'll say, console.log array bracket I, and it should work pretty much the same way, right? This one is a little bit different in that it looks for each property of array, and you can actually create named items within an array in JavaScript. And so while this one would get all the indexed items, it would miss the named items. This would get the named ones and the indexed items, okay? So the difference doesn't really matter to us. Like in general usage, both of these kind of do the same thing. Let's give it a test. So we'll refresh. So here's our first array. It loops, through all the items, and then here's the second one after the line, and it pretty much gets all the items again, okay? So anyway, so there's a quick introduction to arrays, and you can do, just as you imagine, you can do all of the things that you think you'd ever want to do with an array in any other language. You can do that in JavaScript. You can add items to array, you can delete items from the array, you can insert items, you can splice two arrays together. The one thing about JavaScript is that you can mix things in array. Like, that's kind of unique, okay? Arrays are also objects. So anytime you create a variable that contains an array, it points to the actual object in memory. And if you create another variable that points that is equal to the same array, it doesn't create a copy. So that's actually like a lot of languages, unlike Swift though, okay? So Swift passes arrays as a value. Let's do this. Let's say var berry, that's like array B, right? Okay, is equal to array. Okay, maybe it should be beret, right? If I set the B array equal to the first array, then when I console log the new array, right, it looks like this, right? It'll look the same. And if I, maybe I'll put this line here too so you can just see where that one ends there, right? And then if I said, B array dot push, and then I said, let's push something into the array. Let's push some 5s. I don't know. How about that? The number 555, right? Okay. And then, if I was to, after this, if I was to console log the first array and the second array, you'd see that they were both the same. Okay, so I'll put the line here again. Okay, so here we have a line. It should, we set a new array equal to the old array, and then we logged the new array, so it should look like the old one. And then we added an item, and then down here, when we log the two arrays again, they will both look the same. Okay. Why is that? Oops, I opened up Xcode. Let's quit that. There we go. Let's refresh here. So here we logged our new array, and then we added 555 to it, and then we logged the old array and the new array, and they're both the same. So modifying one of these arrays here modifies them both, because arrays are objects, and whenever you set a variable equal to an object, so here if I set one variable equal to the value of another object, then they both reference the same object. Okay, so that's just something to note about arrays in JavaScript. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope that is helpful.